A man walks through Geneva's Eau Vive district at 7 in the morning. Spring air, clean streets. He carries a leather briefcase, wears a dark suit. Looks like any other consultant heading to an early meeting. His name is Michel Rousseau. French passport, works in international trade, travels constantly for business. His neighbors know him as quiet, professional, unremarkable. He has no idea 3 intelligence agencies are about to fight over his corpse. 72 hours later, a maintenance worker unlocks apartment 412 after complaints about a smell. What he finds triggers an international manhunt that will span 8 countries and cost $15 million. The body on the living room floor belongs to Michel Rousseau. Single gunshot, wound to the back of the head. Professional execution, no signs of struggle, no robbery, nothing taken except documents. The kind of documents you can't report missing because they never officially existed. Swiss federal police treat it as a targeted killing. Standard investigation procedures, they photograph the scene, catalog the evidence, run prints through databases. But something about this murder catches attention it shouldn't. A Mossad officer operating under diplomatic cover at the Israeli mission in Geneva has a contact within Swiss law enforcement. A relationship built over years, careful cultivation, mutual benefit on terrorism intelligence. This contact mentions the murder casually over coffee, notes that the victim had interesting travel history, multiple trips to Beirut, Damascus, Tehran, cities where legitimate French consultants rarely conduct business. The Mossad officer asks for more details. What he receives makes his blood run cold. Among the personal effects recovered from the apartment are 3 books in Arabic, all published in Beirut in the 1980s, technical manuals on explosives and firearms, and tucked between pages describing timer mechanisms for improvised devices is a photograph, black and white. 2 men at what appears to be a training camp. One man is clearly the victim, much younger, perhaps mid-20s. The other man in the photograph is someone Mossad knows very well, Carlos the Jackal, the world's most notorious terrorist for hire. But Carlos was captured in Sudan in 1994, imprisoned in France ever since. This photograph suggests something Israeli intelligence suspected but never confirmed. Someone had continued his work. Someone had inherited his methods, his training, his philosophy. And that someone had just been executed in Geneva, which meant either the successor had betrayed someone powerful, or there was infighting within what remained of Carlos's organization. Either scenario presented danger and opportunity. To understand what Mossad was dealing with, you need to understand who Carlos actually was. Born in Venezuela in 1949. Named after Vladimir Lenin by his communist father, he received training in Cuba and at Patrice Lumumba University in Moscow. Soviet. Intelligence identified promising revolutionaries. People who could conduct operations the USSR wanted done without direct involvement. Carlos became the perfect international terrorist. No fixed ideology beyond vague anti-imperialism. He worked for whoever paid him. Palestinian groups, Libyan intelligence, East German Stasi, Syrian intelligence services. He was responsible for bombings in France, the seizure of OPEC ministers in Vienna, assassinations across Europe, attacks on Israeli and Jewish targets. What made Carlos dangerous wasn't just his willingness to kill, it was his methodology. He built networks of safe houses, weapons caches, support personnel across multiple countries. He trained operatives in specialized skills, surveillance detection, cover identity creation, operational security. He understood how to exploit gaps in international cooperation, moving between countries that didn't share intelligence with each other, and he documented everything. Carlos was meticulous about recording his methods, his training procedures, his operational philosophy. When French intelligence finally located him in Sudan in 1994 and essentially kidnapped him with Sudanese government cooperation, authorities found extensive files detailing his network structure. They also found evidence that Carlos had trained dozens of other operatives over the years. Most were captured or killed in the decade following his arrest. But intelligence agencies suspected that at least a few had disappeared, gone dormant, waiting. The man killed in Geneva, whose real name turned out to be Farid al-Masri, was one of these dormant operatives, Lebanese national who'd acquired French citizenship through fraudulent documents. Mossad's records showed he'd been flagged in 1987 during surveillance of a suspected training camp in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, but he'd disappeared before they could action the intelligence. Now he was dead, executed, and the question was whether he'd been operating alone, or whether he'd trained someone else, someone who was now carrying on Carlos's legacy. The answer came 2 months later from an unexpected source: Tokyo, May 7th, 2007. A Japanese businessman named Takeshi Yamamoto walks to his car in an underground parking garage near his office in Shibuya district. 3 shots. He survives but critically injured. Japanese police investigate and discover that Yamamoto isn't just a businessman. He's actually an intelligence officer with Japan's Public Security Intelligence Agency, working undercover to monitor North Korean operations in Japan. The assassination attempt appears to be North Korean retaliation. Japanese intelligence requests assistance from allied agencies. They provide ballistic evidence from recovered bullets. The weapon was a Tokarev TT-33 pistol, Soviet-designed firearm common in East Asia. But forensic examination reveals something unusual. The pistol had been professionally modified with suppressor threading that it wasn't standard Soviet manufacturing. The modification work showed extremely high-quality machining, the kind done by specialized armorers, not mass-produced modifications. Japanese intelligence shares this information through established liaison channels, including with Mossad. When Mossad's weapons specialists see the forensic reports and photographs of the bullet markings, they recognize the modification pattern. It matches techniques documented in one of Carlos the Jackal's training manuals, specifically a manual on weapons modification that had been recovered from one of his safe houses in Damascus in 1991. The manual described precise methods for threading Soviet-era pistols to accept suppressors, methods that differed from standard armorer techniques. Someone had studied that manual, learned those techniques, used them to modify the weapon used in Tokyo. This was the first concrete evidence that Carlos's successor wasn't just continuing operations. He was using the exact methodology Carlos had developed and documented, which meant he'd received direct training, access to the original materials, and the resources to operate across continents, Tokyo to Geneva. That's not the work of an amateur, that's professional-grade international operations capability. But there was a problem. Mossad had no idea who the successor was. No name, no photograph, no confirmed sightings. Just evidence of his work appearing in multiple countries. They needed something more, a pattern, a mistake, some vulnerability they could exploit. What they couldn't know was that 3 weeks earlier, surveillance cameras in Barcelona had captured footage that would break the case wide open. Nobody was looking for it yet. Nobody knew what they were seeing, but the digital record existed, waiting to be discovered. Barcelona, April 19th, 2007. 3 weeks before Tokyo. A man checks into a boutique hotel in the Gothic Quarter using a German passport, name listed as Klaus Becker, business consultant. The hotel has modern security, digital records, surveillance footage. Standard for European hotels. After terrorism concerns increased security requirements, the man stays 2 nights, checks out, pays in cash, nothing unusual. What he doesn't know is that Spanish intelligence has been running routine surveillance on this hotel for 6 months. Not because of terrorism, because of financial crimes, money laundering networks using boutique hotels for transactions. The surveillance isn't targeted at any specific guest. It's bulk collection. Everything recorded, everything stored, waiting for analysts to review it against known criminals. Before we continue, here's a question. Drop your answer in the comments. Given what intelligence agencies can now collect and store indefinitely, is this kind of blanket surveillance justified if it catches threats like this? Or does the privacy cost outweigh the security benefit? Think about that. Because what happens next depends entirely on this surveillance existing in the first place. 6 weeks after the Tokyo shooting, Mossad begins reaching out to allied intelligence services. They're looking for any unusual travel patterns, anyone who was in Geneva around the time of al-Masri's murder, and in Tokyo around the time of the assassination attempt. They're running facial recognition searches through databases, passport records, border crossings, hotel registrations. It's like searching for a specific grain of sand on a beach. But modern intelligence work isn't about finding needles in haystacks. It's about building systems that automatically flag anything unusual, patterns that don't fit, anomalies in massive data sets. Spanish intelligence responds to Mossad's request. They run their own searches, and an algorithm flags something interesting. The German passport used in Barcelona, Klaus Becker. It was issued 3 years ago, but has only been used for 4 international trips, all to cities with significant intelligence activity. Geneva, Tokyo, Barcelona, Prague. The travel pattern doesn't match a normal business consultant. Too sporadic. Too focused on specific locations. Spanish intelligence pulls the surveillance footage from the Barcelona hotel. They send it to Mossad. Israeli analysts begin frame-by-frame examination. The man calling himself Klaus Becker is careful. He avoids direct camera angles, wears glasses that partially obscure his face, keeps his head down in public areas. Classic counter-surveillance behavior. But he makes one small mistake. In the hotel lobby on his second morning, he removes his glasses for approximately 8 seconds while wiping them with a cloth. The surveillance camera captures a clear view of his face. Mossad's facial recognition systems process the image against their databases. No matches in known terrorist files. No matches in criminal databases. No matches anywhere in their systems. But when they expand the search to allied intelligence databases, something hits. The face matches footage from a surveillance operation conducted by Lebanese intelligence in 2003. The footage showed a man meeting with a known Hezbollah facilitator in Beirut. Lebanese intelligence had flagged him as suspicious but never identified him. The file was shared with allied services as part of routine intelligence exchange. It had been sitting in databases for 4 years, waiting. Now they had 2 images of the same person. Barcelona in 2007, Beirut in 2003. Different identities, same face. They were getting closer, but they still didn't have a name, still didn't know where he'd be next, still couldn't predict his movements or prevent his operations. What they needed was real-time intelligence, active surveillance, the ability to track him continuously once they located him again. But finding someone who operates across continents using multiple identities is nearly impossible, unless they make another mistake, unless they create a pattern you can exploit. The pattern emerged from financial analysis. Mossad's Economic Intelligence Division began tracking money flows associated with the operations they knew about. Geneva, Tokyo, Barcelona. Each operation required funding, advance payments, operational expenses, travel costs, weapons procurement. Professional assassins don't work for free. Someone was paying. And payment leaves, traces, wire transfers, currency exchanges, cash withdrawals, account balances shifting across international banking systems. Financial intelligence is tedious work. Analysts spend months examining thousands of transactions, looking for amounts that match operational costs, timing that correlates with known events, accounts that connect to each other through indirect transfers. Most transactions are legitimate, normal business, normal life. But buried within terabytes of financial data are the handful of transactions that fund operations designed to kill people. Mossad identified a pattern: small amounts, never more than $10,000 at a time, withdrawn from accounts in Cyprus and the UAE. The accounts were registered to shell companies. Standard money laundering structure, difficult to trace, but possible. With enough time and cooperation from financial intelligence units in multiple countries, the shell companies trace back to holding companies in Panama and the British Virgin Islands. Those holding companies received funding from accounts in Lebanon, and those Lebanese accounts received deposits from accounts linked to Iranian intelligence operations. The money trail revealed something crucial. The Successor wasn't working independently. He was conducting operations for Iranian intelligence, specifically operations against Israeli and Western targets that Iran wanted to deny responsibility for. This explained the Geneva killing. Al-Masri had probably been eliminated because he knew too much, or demanded too much money, or showed signs of becoming unreliable. Iranian intelligence had ordered his execution and used their Successor asset to carry it out. The same asset who then conducted the Tokyo operation, targeting a Japanese intelligence officer investigating Iranian-North Korean cooperation. Now, they knew who was funding him. but they still needed to find him, and that meant waiting for him to move again, to conduct another operation, to make contact with his handlers, to create another opportunity for surveillance. The opportunity came from signals intelligence, not Mossad's own capabilities, but cooperation with the American National Security Agency. The NSA monitors global communications on a scale that makes other intelligence agencies look primitive. Fiber optic cables, satellite transmissions, cell phone networks, email servers. They collect everything, store everything, search everything. When Mossad shared the financial intelligence connecting the Successor to Iranian operations, the NSA began searching their archives for communications, patterns matching the operational timeline. What they found was a series of encrypted messages sent through secure channels between Iranian intelligence officers and an unknown recipient. The messages themselves couldn't be decrypted. Modern encryption is mathematically unbreakable if implemented correctly, but metadata can't be hidden. The time messages were sent, the location they were sent from, the location they were received. That information creates patterns, and patterns reveal behavior. The NSA identified 17 encrypted messages sent from Iranian intelligence accounts to a recipient whose device had been in Geneva 3 days before al-Masri's murder, in Tokyo 4 days before the Yamamoto shooting, in Barcelona 2 weeks before the Spanish surveillance footage was captured. The same device, different locations, always near areas where operations occurred or were planned. This was the breakthrough. They had a device identifier, unique digital signature embedded in every cell phone and computer. It's how telecommunications networks route data, how internet service providers identify users, how law enforcement tracks criminals, and how intelligence agencies find targets. The NSA shared this device identifier with Mossad, along with historical location data showing everywhere this device had been for the past 3 years. The historical data painted a picture. The Successor moved constantly, never stayed in one location more than a week, traveled primarily through Turkey and Eastern Europe, avoided Western Europe except for operations, used multiple identities but kept the same device. A mistake, small but fatal. He probably thought encryption was enough protection, that keeping the same device was a reasonable operational risk compared to the hassle of constantly acquiring new ones. He was wrong. Mossad now had the ability to track him in real time. Every time his device connected to a cell tower, every time it accessed the internet, every time it sent or received data. The NSA's global surveillance infrastructure would flag the activity and alert Israeli intelligence. They could follow his movements, predict his destinations, plan interception operations, but there was a complication. Just knowing where someone is doesn't mean you can capture them, especially someone trained in counter-surveillance, someone who might be armed, someone operating in countries where Israeli intelligence has limited ability to conduct operations. They needed him to move somewhere they could act, somewhere they had assets in place, somewhere local authorities might cooperate, or at least look the other way. And they needed him to stay in one place long enough to plan and execute a capture operation. Mobile targets are nearly impossible to grab. You need preparation time, reconnaissance, backup plans, escape routes. You can't just snatch someone off a street in a foreign city and hope for the best. The waiting began. Intelligence officers monitoring, the device identifier 24 hours a day, watching for movement, ready to deploy teams anywhere on short notice. Days passed, then weeks. The device stayed in Beirut. Good news and bad news. Good because Beirut was a city where Mossad had extensive intelligence networks. Bad because Beirut was also heavily controlled by Hezbollah. Iranian-backed, hostile territory. Conducting operations there meant significant risk. But while they waited, something else was happening, something the Successor had no way of knowing. Mossad was building a complete intelligence picture, not just of him, but of his entire network, everyone he met with, everyone who supported his operations, document forgers, arms suppliers, safe house operators, money couriers. Intelligence operations aren't just about capturing one person. They're about dismantling entire networks, preventing future operations, eliminating the infrastructure that makes terrorism possible. Through surveillance of his device identifier, Mossad tracked every person he met with in Beirut, every safe house he visited, every contact point. They photographed faces, ran them through databases, built network maps, showing how everyone connected to everyone else. This is what modern intelligence work actually looks like. Not dramatic confrontations, but patient documentation, building cases, creating leverage, and then the device moved, September 3rd, 2007. The identifier appeared in Istanbul. The Successor had traveled from Beirut to Turkey. Mossad's Istanbul station received immediate alert. They had officers in the city within hours, not for capture, for surveillance. They needed to understand what he was doing there, who he was meeting, what operation he might be planning. Every movement he made provided more intelligence, more pieces of the puzzle. Istanbul is a city of 15 million people, ancient, chaotic, perfect for intelligence operations, easy to disappear, easy to conduct business that attracts no attention. The Successor checked into a small hotel in the Beyoğlu district, used a Turkish passport this time, different identity, but same device. Same digital signature broadcasting his location every time it connected to a cell tower. What he didn't know was that 8 Mossad officers were now tracking his every movement, following him on foot, monitoring his communications, photographing everyone he met. He thought he was invisible, moving through the city with standard counter-surveillance procedures, changing directions randomly, doubling back, checking for following vehicles, all the techniques Carlos had taught his students. But those techniques were designed for physical surveillance, not digital tracking, not the fusion of signals intelligence and human intelligence that modern agencies employ. He could check for cars following him all day. Wouldn't matter. The officers tracking him already knew everywhere he was going because his phone told them. On his second day in Istanbul, he met with someone in a cafe near Taksim Square. The meeting lasted 43 minutes. Mossad officers photographed the contact from multiple angles. Facial recognition identified him as Osman Demir, a document forger known to Turkish intelligence, not wanted for any major crimes, but someone who provided services to people operating outside the law. The meeting suggested the Successor was acquiring new identity documents, probably preparing for another operation, another identity to use, another country to visit. This presented an opportunity, not for capture, for something more valuable. Technical access. Here's what most people don't understand about modern intelligence work. Physical access to a target is good, but digital access is better. If you can capture someone, you can question them. But if you can compromise their communications devices, you can watch everything they do, everyone they talk to, everything they plan, for weeks or months, without them ever knowing. One captured operative gives you what they know. One compromised device gives you access to an entire network. Mossad's cyber operations unit developed a plan. The Successor's phone was encrypted. Modern smartphones have security features that make them nearly impossible to hack remotely. But physical access changes everything. If you can hold the device for 90 seconds, install specialized malware, then return it without the owner noticing, you own that device. Everything on it becomes accessible. Messages, photos, location data, even if the device is turned off. The malware can activate the microphone and camera remotely, turn the phone into a surveillance device that the target carries everywhere. The technical team prepared the malware, custom designed for his specific phone model, designed to install silently, leave no obvious traces, operate invisibly in the background. The challenge was getting physical access to the phone for those crucial 90 seconds. You can't just grab it off a table. He'd notice it missing. Security systems would show theft. You need a situation where he voluntarily gives up physical control of the device for a short period. They created that situation. September 5th, late afternoon. The Successor enters a busy cafe in the Galata district, orders coffee, sits at a table near the window, takes out his phone, begins checking messages. Standard behavior, nothing unusual. What he doesn't see is that 3 of the people in this cafe aren't really customers. They're Mossad officers. One is the barista who took his order. One is reading a newspaper 2 tables away. One is typing on a laptop near the door. The officer at the door makes a phone call, speaks loud enough to be heard, mentions a security emergency at the building next door, fire alarm or gas leak. People in the cafe glance up. Some ignore it. Others look concerned. The barista behind the counter receives a call on the cafe's phone, hangs up, announces that building management is requesting everyone evacuate as a precaution, just for a few minutes, safety protocol. The successor looks annoyed. He hasn't finished his coffee, but he's not going to argue with a safety evacuation. He stands, starts to pocket his phone, then realizes he's still expecting an important message, decides to leave the phone on the table, charge it while he's gone. The outlet is right there. He plugs it in, walks outside with everyone else. Standard human behavior. People trust public spaces, especially in cities they think are neutral territory. What he doesn't know is that the evacuation is completely fake. No emergency. No building management request. Just 3 Mossad officers creating a 92-second window. The moment he exits the cafe, the officer who'd been reading the newspaper moves to his table, unplugs the phone, connects it to a small device hidden in her bag. The device bypasses the phone's security, installs the malware, takes 87 seconds. She disconnects, plugs the phone back into the wall outlet, returns to her table. Entire operation takes 92 seconds from start to finish. The successor returns 3 minutes later, sits down, checks his phone. Everything appears normal. Battery charging, no missed messages. He finishes his coffee, pays, leaves, completely unaware that his phone is now an open channel directly into his entire operation. Within hours, Mossad begins receiving data. Every message he sends, every call he makes, every photo he takes, every location he visits. The malware works perfectly, completely invisible to the user. And because it operates at the system level, even if he checks for suspicious apps or unusual battery drain, he won't find anything. The malware is designed to look like legitimate system processes. The intelligence flood begins. Real-time access to his communications reveals active planning for an operation. Target: an Israeli diplomat scheduled to attend a conference in Beirut in late October. The conference is about regional economic cooperation, public event. Multiple countries participating, the diplomat is relatively low profile, not someone who'd normally rate assassination, but the messages reveal this isn't about the diplomat specifically. It's about sending a message, showing that Iranian intelligence can strike Israeli targets anywhere in the Middle East, even in supposedly neutral venues. The planning is detailed, reconnaissance photos of the conference venue, security assessments, lists of attendees, potential methods. The successor is coordinating with local facilitators in Beirut, Hezbollah operatives providing logistical support. A weapons cache is being prepared, explosives, timers. The operation is scheduled for October 24th, 4 days before the conference begins. That's when he plans to place the device. What the successor doesn't know is that Mossad now has complete visibility into his entire plan. Every detail, every timeline, every person involved. They could prevent the operation easily, alert Lebanese security, evacuate the venue, cancel the conference. But that would reveal they have access to his communications, burn the intelligence source, lose the ability to track him further. Instead, they decide to let him proceed, not all the way, but far enough to capture him in the act, catch him with evidence, maximum intelligence value, maximum operational impact, dismantle the network supporting him. Not just prevent one attack, but eliminate the entire infrastructure. The successor travels back to Beirut on September 9th. Mossad tracks every movement. They know which safe house he's using, which contacts he meets, where he stores weapons, where he sleeps. They have more information about his operation than he realizes they could possibly have. They're reading his messages before his handlers and Iranian intelligence read them. They're watching him plan an attack they have already decided to prevent. This is the advantage of technical access. Physical surveillance can be detected, human sources can be turned, but a compromised device is invisible. The target has no way to know. No counter-surveillance procedure can detect it. No operational security measure can prevent it. Once your communications are owned, you're operating blind. Mid-September. The planning continues. The successor meets with a bomb maker in southern Beirut. They discuss technical specifications, how much explosive material is needed, what type of detonator provides most reliable timing. The bomb maker is known to Mossad. They've been tracking him for years, wanted for involvement in attacks against Israeli targets. Lebanese authorities won't touch him because he's protected by Hezbollah. But now they have direct evidence linking him to a planned attack. More intelligence to file away. More leverage for future operations. The Successor also meets with the diplomat's security detail, not the actual security officers, but someone inside the conference organizing committee who has access to security protocols. This person provides schedules, entry procedures, weak points and venue security. The insider is being paid through the same financial networks Mossad already identified, money from Iranian accounts, through shell companies to local facilitators. The insider has no idea that every detail of this collaboration is being recorded, documented, prepared for future prosecution or exploitation. What none of them know is that Mossad is building a complete case, not just against the Successor, against everyone involved, everyone who facilitated, everyone who provided support, everyone who took money to betray security protocols. This operation isn't just about capturing one person. It's about exposing an entire network, demonstrating the consequences of working with Iranian intelligence, creating deterrence through exposure. But there's a complication: time pressure. The conference is October 24th. Today is September 18th. 36 days until the planned attack. Mossad needs to decide when to act. Too early, and the Successor might escape. He'd know something was wrong. Disappear into another identity. Too late, and the operation might proceed past the point where they can safely intervene. The margin for error is narrow. They decide to wait until he has the explosive device, physical evidence, actionable intelligence, proof of intent and capability. October 20th, 4 days before the planned attack. That's when they'll move. That gives them time to coordinate with whatever local force they can recruit to conduct the actual capture. Because Israeli operations inside Beirut are extremely risky. Hezbollah controls most of the city. Israeli operatives who are captured face torture and execution. This operation needs local force doing the heavy work. The problem is Lebanese security forces are infiltrated by Hezbollah. Can't trust them. Syrian intelligence has influence through multiple channels. Can't trust them. The only potentially reliable force is Lebanese forces intelligence, a Christian militia with history of cooperation with Israel against Syrian and Hezbollah interests. Not official cooperation, not public. But relationships exist, built over decades of shared enemies and mutual interests. Mossad reaches out through backdoor channels, presents the situation carefully, not mentioning Israeli involvement, framing it as threat to Lebanese stability, offering intelligence about a planned major bombing in Beirut, target unclear, but threat credible. Would Lebanese forces be interested in disrupting this operation? Would they be willing to conduct a raid based on intelligence provided? The answer takes 3 days. Lebanese forces command agrees. They want the intelligence. They want credit for preventing an attack. They're willing to conduct the operation with one condition: no Israeli presence at the scene. No way to tie them publicly to Israeli intelligence. Deniability is essential. Mossad agrees. They'll provide the intelligence, the location, the timing, the details. But Lebanese forces operatives conduct the actual raid. October 20th arrives. The Successor has been in his Beirut safe house for 2 days, assembling the device. The malware on his phone provides real-time updates, photos of his work, messages to his handlers confirming progress. Everything Mossad needs to know. The device is nearly complete. Tomorrow he plans to conduct final reconnaissance of the venue. Day after that, placement. They're out of time. Lebanese forces receives the final intelligence package, address of the safe house, description of the target, warning that he's armed and trained, recommendation for quick violent entry. The raid is scheduled for 4 a.m., when people sleep deepest, when reaction time is slowest, when surprise is most effective. The Successor goes to sleep at 1:15 a.m. His phone tracks. Him lying still. No movement. Deep sleep. He has no idea that 18 Lebanese forces operatives are staging 2 blocks away, checking weapons, reviewing entry procedures, preparing to breach his door in less than 3 hours. He dreams. Whatever dreams trained killers have. Maybe he dreams about the operation he's planning, about success, about payment, about survival. He doesn't dream about capture, about the end of his operation, about the intelligence agencies that have been watching his every move for months. 4 a.m. The door crashes inward. Flashbang grenades, shouting. Armed men. The Successor reaches for his weapon. Too slow, too disoriented. He wounds one Lebanese forces operative before being subdued. The struggle is brief, violent, but conclusive. Within 90 seconds, he's restrained. The safe house is secured. The explosive device is recovered, partially assembled. Enough evidence for multiple criminal charges. Enough proof of planned attack to justify everything that comes next. What happens to him after capture remains classified. No official arrest, no trial, no public acknowledgement. He disappears into the invisible machinery of intelligence operations. Interrogated, debriefed, his entire network exposed. 23 people he killed directly. Hundreds more through operations he facilitated. 9 years of work for Iranian intelligence. All documented, all exploited for counterintelligence value. The conference proceeds as planned. The Israeli diplomat attends, never knowing how close death came. The bombing never happens. The public never learns it was planned. This is how intelligence operations conclude, not with announcements, but with silence. The interrogation lasts 72 hours. Location in the mountains outside Beirut. Controlled by Lebanese forces, remote, secure, no official record. Mossad officers aren't present during questioning, deniability, but they provide questions through intermediaries, specific questions about operations, about handlers, about networks, about methodology. Everything they couldn't learn from technical surveillance alone. The Successor talks. Not immediately, not willingly, but eventually. People always do, not because of torture, because of technique. Professional interrogators know psychology, know how to break operational security training, know how to make cooperation seem like the rational choice. You present evidence, show what you already know, demonstrate the futility of resistance, then you offer small concessions. Better conditions, reduced consequences, the illusion of control. His real name is Hassan al-Turki. Syrian national, fled to Lebanon during political upheaval, age 37, trained by Farid al-Masri beginning in 1998. 9 years of operations, 11 missions total. Iranian intelligence, Syrian intelligence, Hezbollah, Palestinian militant groups, multiple clients, multiple payments, professional killer operating at the intersection of state-sponsored terrorism and freelance violence. The details he provides are devastating, not just for him, for everyone who ever worked with him, every facilitator, every handler, every client, every safe house operator, every document forger, every arms dealer, every financial courier, names, addresses, bank accounts, communication protocols, operational procedures, everything. What he doesn't understand is why they want all this information, why they care about people he worked with years ago, about operations already completed, about networks he thought were secure. He thinks they're building a case against him, preparing for prosecution, maybe eventual prisoner exchange. He doesn't realize this isn't about him anymore. It's about everyone he ever touched, everyone who facilitated terrorism, everyone who thought they could operate invisibly. The intelligence from his debriefing spreads through allied agencies within days. Mossad shares it carefully, selectively, through established channels, to agencies that can action it. CIA receives information about facilitators operating in Eastern Europe. MI6 gets details on financial networks running through London. BND learns about safe houses in Germany. Interpol receives names for international arrest warrants. Turkish intelligence discovers document forgers in Istanbul and Ankara. Czech intelligence identifies arms traffickers in Prague. The dismantling begins. October 28th, Istanbul. Turkish National Police raid an apartment in the Fatih district. They arrest Osman Demir, the document forger, the one who met with the Successor in September, the one Mossad photographed and identified. The raid recovers equipment for producing fraudulent passports, stamps, blanks. Computers with facial recognition defeat software. Demir has produced documents for terrorists for over a decade, operated with complete impunity. Until now. What Demir doesn't know is that his arrest isn't random, isn't lucky police work. It's the direct result of intelligence extracted from the Successor during his debriefing. The Successor described Demir's operation in detail. Location, methods, clients, everything. Turkish authorities received this intelligence through liaison channels, presented as independent investigation results. They get credit for the arrest. Mossad's role remains invisible. November 3rd, Prague. Czech intelligence conducts surveillance on a warehouse in the Liban district. Inside are 3 Ukrainian nationals. They're selling weapons. Soviet-era firearms. Some modified, some with serial numbers removed. The kind of weapons that end up in terrorist hands. Czech police raid the warehouse, recover 37 weapons, arrest all 3 Ukrainians. Major success for Czech counterterrorism efforts. What they don't publicize is how they knew about this warehouse, how they identified the Ukrainians, how they timed the raid perfectly to catch them with weapons in hand. The intelligence came from Al-Turki's debriefing. He described using these exact suppliers, this exact warehouse, for weapons used in multiple operations. Czech intelligence received the tip, acted on it, gets credit. The intelligence source remains classified. November 11th, Amman, Jordan. Jordanian General Intelligence Directorate arrests a man named Karim Hassoun, charged with facilitating terrorist financing, money laundering, supporting extremist operations. Hassoun operated currency exchange businesses, moved money between accounts, converted funds into untraceable cash, served clients across the Middle East, including Al-Turki, including Iranian intelligence, including everyone who needed to move money outside official banking systems. The Jordanian arrest is based on financial intelligence, transactions traced through international cooperation, bank records showing suspicious patterns. But the original lead came from Al-Turki describing exactly how Hassoun's operation worked. Which businesses, which accounts, which methods. The Successor thought he was protecting his network by never keeping written records, never documenting contacts, relying entirely on memory. But memory can be extracted, and once extracted, memory becomes evidence. This is the real value of capturing someone like Al-Turki, not preventing one attack, but dismantling entire ecosystems. Every person he ever worked with becomes a target. Every safe house becomes compromised. Every financial account becomes traceable. Every operational method becomes known. The intelligence value compounds over months and years. Operations prevented that would have killed dozens. Networks disrupted that would have conducted hundreds of attacks. Future threats eliminated before they can manifest. But there's something else. Something the Successor revealed during debriefing that changed everything. Al-Turki wasn't the only student Farid al-Masri trained. There was another, someone Al-Turki knew only through messages, never met in person, referred to in communications only as the Syrian, now operating independently, conducting different operations for different clients, but trained in the same methodology, using the same techniques, potentially as dangerous as Al-Turki himself. This revelation launches a new phase of the investigation, not public, not visible, but intensive. Mossad begins searching for the Syrian. They have very limited information, no real name, no photograph, no confirmed operations, just mentions in Al-Turki's communications, references to training together in the late 1990s, implications of ongoing operations in Europe, not much to work with. But they have something now they didn't have before. They know the methodology, the training, the operational patterns. Carlos the Jackal's techniques passed down through al-Masri to his students. If the Syrian uses the same methods, he'll leave the same traces, same financial patterns, same weapon modifications, same counter-surveillance behaviors, same digital vulnerabilities. Finding him becomes possible because they understand how he was trained. The search continues quietly. Intelligence agencies across Europe receive alerts, watch for specific patterns, weapon modifications matching Carlos's manuals, financial transactions with certain characteristics, travel patterns suggesting professional operations. It's patient work, tedious. No guarantee of success. But modern intelligence is built on this kind of methodical investigation. Not dramatic breakthroughs, just persistent accumulation of fragments. Meanwhile, the Successor remains in custody, location classified, status unknown. Some sources suggest he was transferred to Israeli custody, taken from Lebanon by sea, transported to a facility where high-value sources are debriefed for months or years. Other sources suggest he remains in Lebanese forces' custody, held at their discretion, useful for future interrogations, future intelligence requirements. The truth is probably somewhere between. Informal arrangements, shared custody, access granted as needed, official records showing nothing. This is the reality of modern counterterrorism. People disappear, not killed, not released, just held indefinitely in facilities that don't officially exist, questioned repeatedly, kept available for future intelligence needs. Their families have no idea where they are. Their governments can't locate them. Human rights organizations can't document them. They exist in the gap between law and necessity, between oversight and operational requirements, and between what's legal and what's effective. Is this justice? That's not a question intelligence agencies answer. They prevent attacks. They protect citizens. They neutralize threats. The legal framework is someone else's concern. The moral implications are someone else's problem. Their job is effectiveness, results, bodies not blown up, events not disrupted, countries not attacked. The methods are classified. The facilities are secret. The outcomes are what matter. The operation to track and capture Al-Turki took 7 months. From the initial lead in Geneva to the final capture in Beirut. It involved operations in 8 countries, coordination with 6 foreign intelligence agencies, dozens of officers across 3 continents. Estimated cost over $15 million. The intelligence value was immeasurable. Why immeasurable? Because it prevented not just one attack, not just the Beirut bombing, but future attacks that would have killed dozens or hundreds. It dismantled networks that operated for years. It exposed facilitators who served multiple terrorist organizations. It demonstrated that even the most careful operational security eventually fails against coordinated international intelligence efforts. That demonstration alone creates deterrence, makes potential terrorists think twice, makes facilitators reconsider their involvement, makes state sponsors worry about exposure. And here's what makes this operation particularly significant. Al-Turki was never captured through dramatic confrontation, never caught red-handed by brilliant detective work. He was tracked through patient intelligence gathering, technical surveillance, international cooperation, and exploitation of a single vulnerability. The 92-second window in that Istanbul cafe, the malware installed on his phone. That moment provided everything that followed: real-time visibility into his operations, complete exposure of his network, perfect timing for his capture. Without that technical access, the operation likely fails. Al-Turki continues operating. The Beirut bombing happens. People die. Future attacks proceed. The network remains intact. But modern intelligence capabilities make that kind of invisibility increasingly impossible. Every device creates metadata. Every transaction leaves traces. Every movement through surveillance-saturated cities captures images. Every communication generates patterns that algorithms can analyze. Carlos the Jackal operated successfully for 2 decades because the technology to track him didn't exist. International cooperation was limited by Cold War divisions. Encryption was breakable. Surveillance was primitive. He moved through gaps in capability and coordination that seemed permanent. Al-Turki operated for 9 years, but the gaps were closing. Technology improved. Cooperation increased. Methods evolved. His mentor al-Masri was killed in Geneva. Al-Turki was captured in Beirut. The Syrian, whoever he is, wherever he operates, faces an intelligence environment more hostile than anything Carlos ever imagined. This is the trajectory of modern intelligence work. Not individual genius, not dramatic breakthroughs, but systems, capabilities, integration, technology that tracks everyone, databases that connect everything, algorithms that find patterns invisible to human analysis, international cooperation that shares intelligence across borders and agencies. The individual operator, no matter how skilled, no matter how careful, becomes increasingly visible against this background. Does this make us safer? Probably. Does it make us more secure? Certainly. Does it raise questions about privacy, oversight, and accountability? Absolutely. But those questions exist in tension: security versus privacy, effectiveness versus ethics, results versus rights. Intelligence agencies operate in the space where those tensions meet, where choices have to be made without perfect information or perfect options, where preventing attacks requires methods that make people uncomfortable. The operation against Al-Turki succeeded because agencies chose effectiveness over constraint. They compromised a device without judicial oversight. They conducted surveillance across multiple countries without international warrants. They coordinated captures without formal legal process. They disappeared a person into indefinite detention without trial. Every step raises legal and ethical questions. Every step was also necessary to prevent an attack that would have killed innocent people. This is the machinery that operates invisibly, protecting us from threats we never know existed, using methods we'd probably object to if we understood them fully, creating security through secrecy, through capabilities we don't discuss, through cooperation we don't acknowledge, through actions we don't document. The Israeli diplomat attended the Beirut conference, never knew death was planned. The conference proceeded without incident. The bombing never happened. The public never learned an operation was prevented. This is success in intelligence work, not headlines, not credit, not recognition, but silence. Operations prevented that no one knows were planned. Threats neutralized that the public never hears about. People protected who never realized they needed protection. If this exposed the invisible machinery that keeps you safe, subscribe for the next operation. Because this is just one story, one threat, one network. But the infrastructure that tracked Al-Turki tracks thousands of others. The methods that compromised his communications compromise countless targets. The cooperation that dismantled his network dismantles others every day. Most of it stays secret. Most of it never becomes public. But occasionally, carefully, selectively, fragments emerge. The intelligence Al-Turki provided continues shaping operations years later. Every name he gave, every location he described, every method he revealed. That information sits in classified databases, gets cross-referenced with new intelligence, connects to other investigations, creates a map of an entire ecosystem, not just terrorists, but everyone who supports them, everyone who profits from violence, everyone who facilitates operations that kill innocent people. Some of those people have been arrested, some have been killed, some remain under surveillance, watched, documented, waiting for the moment when acting against them serves strategic interests. This is long-game intelligence work, not immediate justice, but eventual accountability. Maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10, but the record exists. The evidence accumulates, and when the time comes, the machinery acts. The Successor's capture also changed how intelligence agencies think about technical operations. The Istanbul cafe operation became a case study, taught at training facilities, analyzed for lessons learned, refined for future operations. The 92-second window, the fake evacuation, the invisible malware installation. These techniques get replicated, improved, deployed against other targets. One successful operation becomes the template for dozens more. And somewhere, maybe in Europe, maybe in the Middle East, maybe anywhere in the world, the Syrian operates. The other student, al-Masri's second protege, using the same training, the same methods, the same techniques that Carlos developed and documented decades ago. But now those techniques face an intelligence environment that has learned from experience, that has adapted, that knows what to look for. The Syrian probably thinks he's safe, probably believes his operational security is solid, probably trusts his training to keep him invisible. Al-Turki thought the same thing, right up until Lebanese forces operatives crashed through his door at 4 a.m., right up until the interrogation began, right up until his entire network got dismantled across 3 continents. The Syrian doesn't know his methodology is now documented in classified databases. That intelligence agencies are specifically watching for the patterns al-Masri taught, that the same vulnerabilities that caught Al-Turki will eventually catch him. Because this is how the intelligence game evolves. Each success teaches lessons. Each capture provides intelligence. Each operation exposes methods. What worked for Carlos in the 1970s failed for Al-Turki in 2007. What works for the Syrian now will fail eventually. The only question is when. The only unknown is how many operations he completes before the machinery catches up. Here's your final question. Drop it in the comments. Knowing what you know now about how intelligence agencies actually operate, about the methods they use, about the legal gray areas they work in, do you feel safer or more concerned? Because the same capabilities that caught a terrorist can be used for other purposes. The same surveillance that prevents attacks can monitor anyone. The same lack of oversight that enables quick action also enables potential abuse. There's no easy answer, but it's worth thinking about, because this machinery exists whether we acknowledge it or not, whether we're comfortable with it or not, whether we understand it or not. The machinery is already watching, and it never stops.